Let me share the screen. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So let's just wait for a couple of minutes for others to join.
Okay.
By that time, you can ask me if you have any doubts, or I gave you assignment, like just a home assignment.
So mitosis and meiosis.
Yeah. So I did that.
Yeah.
It just needed to be brushed up. Like I'm sure you must have done it in class 11th as well. While studying cell division. Cell division was not excluded from the syllabus, was
Yes,
it? No, it was there.
Hmm.
Okay, good. So did you revise it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so all clear. So today we'll be discussing that, plus we'll be moving forward with the chapter. So first couple of classes are mostly like you basically build the concepts, and I also understand the foundations of the student, because that's what we do here, like in Learnivio constantly. So your progress has to be checked every week, every class. So after the first few classes, the syllabus starts like picking up pace. And this is the month of Ramzan, so classes are short. So I have to plan things accordingly. What topic should I choose before? Because when it will be normal to our class, so we'll be having more topics covered in one class in one go.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so we started with the basics. I told you about my classes, how to make a terminology section.
Yes.
And we started with the basics of reproduction, direct, indirect, oviparous, viviparous, some concepts we understood basically. And then we went on to understand asexual, sexual reproduction, the definition of which is yet to be like understood completely, but I think
It's okay. Yeah.
was told that no fusion. So I asked you people about asexual and sexual reproduction. You said in asexual there is no fusion of gametes, versus in sexual there is fusion of gametes, right? And then we discussed gametogenesis, not in detail because we have to take gametogenesis in sexual reproduction in detail. Yeah, so mitosis, meiosis. We discussed a little bit of DNA and RNA, right? Just
Yeah.
text and chromosome as well. So today
Yes.
we have to. So let's begin. We also have to discuss gene and alleles and mitosis and meiosis before we move forward. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, very good. Oh, and I gave you my WhatsApp number. I can see that.
Sir, can you make a group like WhatsApp groups for students of your classes, like biology, class 12th?
I take multiple batches.
Batches.
You have to. We'll have to talk to Nishkarsh. You must be in contact with Nishkarsh, right?
Yeah, I have contact.
Talk to him if a WhatsApp group is a possibility where things could be discussed, because everything you're getting now is through the Learnivio app, right? Your assignments and everything.
Yes.
Yeah. So many students are not very comfortable with WhatsApp groups because we personally don't know each other, and WhatsApp group you cannot maintain a lot of privacy because everyone can see everyone's number. So probably that kind of issues might crop up.
Maybe we can use Telegram.
Yeah, something like that. That I think operations head has to decide, which is Nishkarsh. So we'll figure it out, okay? If that's possible for easy communication. You must be getting messages currently with respect to classes and schedules, etc.
Yeah, I have the app. Yeah, I'm getting.
Yeah. So you're getting messages in the app or on your mobile?
Yeah.
In the app.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, so let's begin, Zed. And see, in last class, we discussed DNA and chromosomes. So let's pick from there. So you understood DNA as a long thread, long
Yes.
biomolecule made up of nucleotides. And a nucleotide is the single unit of a DNA, which itself is made up of three different things: a sugar, a phosphate, and a base, a nitrogenous base, correct? Which sugar and phosphate make the backbone of the DNA, and nitrogenous base protrude towards the inside, okay? And we know that a compact form of DNA, a condensed form, with the help of many proteins called histone proteins, it forms the chromosome. So a chromosome is just like a spool of thread where the thread is the DNA in this analogy I gave you, right?
Yes.
Last class. Okay, so today we'll be talking about two more terms. So the third one will be gene and then allele, because that is important in later classes, if not now, but let's understand it here only. So what do you understand by gene? You know about gene?
Genes, yeah. We talk about parent genes like
In class 11th, you must have read about Mendelian genetics, where gene word was very common, correct?
yeah.
Yes. So what is a gene?
Genes like basically comes from our parents. Uh, what can we say?
It comes from parents, right? But if what it is, like just like DNA, you know that what DNA is. DNA is something physical inside the cell. It's a molecule. What do you think is a gene?
Genes basically like
Gene is basically the
getting the what is it? But
so in genetics term, we say that it's the basic unit of heredity, right? And in genetics, through which characters or characteristics are defined. So you have a gene for eye color, you have a gene for your hair texture, you have a gene for the shape of your earbuds, the nose, everything, right?
yes, sir.
So if it is the basic unit of inheritance, then where should it be is the point. So gene is nothing but a sequence, a part of DNA itself. Okay. So I told you above about DNA. So look at this point. So let's say this is a DNA. Okay. This is a double helix DNA. So the bases, if you, how we read DNA is through the bases. And I forgot to tell you, I think there are four kind of these bases. They are called ATGC.
Yeah, I have done like in class 11th.
Yes. A is for adenosine, thymine, guanosine, cytosine, right?
Yeah.
A forms a double bond with T and G forms a triple hydrogen bond with C. This is how they pair up. So A and G both are purines, just some entrance stuff. These are some facts. And T and C are called pyrimidines. So one purine always base pair with another pyrimidine. Okay, purines never base together. They never pair together. So one purine has to pair with another pyrimidine. So A with T and G with C, correct?
Yes.
So we read it, whenever we read any sequence, we read it in terms of ATGC. Okay. Now gene is a DNA sequence, okay, of nucleotides that basically gives rise to characteristics or any protein. Okay. So a functional gene from DNA can be made into a RNA and then can be made into a protein. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Protein is the final thing, workable thing, which we call proteins as the amino acids we call as the structural units of body, correct? It
Yeah.
makes our body. So proteins do everything. It makes the body, it makes the cell, it also works as enzymes, it also works as other molecules that help in different processes. Okay. So gene is a DNA sequence itself. So on a DNA, a region, a structural region of a DNA is called a gene. Okay. And gene has a starting point, which starts with, so on a DNA, if a gene starts here, how will we say that gene will start here and end here? Because at the start, there is a start codon. Codon is just sequence. Okay.
Okay.
So AUG, every protein coding gene has to start with this sequence, AUG. Okay. And it has to end with a stop codon. So stop codon can be of three types: UAG, UAA, or UGA. These three codes work as stop signal, and this single code works as start signal. So if any segment in a DNA has a start point and a stop point, and in between there is a sequence big enough to give rise to a protein, we call it a gene. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes. So gene is nothing but a region on the DNA. For example, you all have, if you see a road, let's assume DNA as the road. Okay.
Okay.
And on road, we make milestones, right? 1 kilometer from this point to this point is 1 kilometer.
Okay.
That segment of the road could, if that road is DNA, that segment can be called a gene between two milestones. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So it's a structural thing, and it is present on the DNA. It is structurally on the DNA. Next thing is allele. So I'm not defining it here. I'm just making you understand so that we can move forward for discussions. Okay. We'll come back to this again when required, and I'll give you definitions then. I'm just brushing up 11th. Allele. Allele also you must have studied in class 11th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Allele is, for example, there can be different types of the same gene, correct? For example, let's say so first thing is characteristic. There is something called characteristic. For example, hair texture is a characteristic feature. Okay. Let's say, or let's say skin color. So skin color is a characteristic. And then comes gene that tells about that skin color. Now these genes can have different alleles. Alleles are different forms of the same gene. You understand?
Like they can vary?
Yes, allele A, allele B. So the gene is for skin color, but allele A, if dominant, will give you a different skin color. If allele B is expressed, it will give you a different skin color.
Okay.
You see that in skin color, there is a gradient. Humans have a very vast gradient of skin color, ranging from very, very fair to very, very dark, correct?
Yes.
That gradient comes because of a protein called melanin, which is produced in the skin cells and is deposited. And melanin has a function of protecting the skin cells from radiation, from UV radiation on the sun, correct? That's why people living in or around the equator are fairly dark skinned, whereas people living away from equator towards the poles have very fair light skin. Okay. Because it's biologically, it makes sense. Now, different alleles of the same genes means different types or different form of the gene. Is it clear?
Yes.
You must have studied allele in context of capital T and small t in class 11th, remember?
Yeah, in plants. Yeah, in plantscapes.
If it is a capital T and small t, it will be tall. And if it is capital T, it will also be tall. So what is the difference between the two? This is called homogeneous.
It is dominant.
Yes, is dominant over small t, correct? But if a capital T is tall, we call it a different genotype. So genotypically, these two are different, right?
Yes.
If their genotypes are different. And what I mean by genotype, I mean that both the alleles, so this allele is coming from one parent and this allele is coming from the other parent, correct?
Yeah.
And both the alleles, if they are different, then they are genotypically different. So their composition is different. Here, both the same alleles are coming from both the parents. So it has capital T, which is tall. We call it homogeneous tall and heterogeneous tall, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So remember, so these two were alleles. If an organism gets small t from one parent and small t from other, then this
dwarf.
Yeah, it will become dwarf. Correct?
Yeah.
But what is the gene that we are talking about? We are talking about gene of height. Correct?
Right here.
It has two different alleles. And what is the characteristic? Height.
Height.
So you understand?
Yes.
Height is the characteristic. It has genes. If it has different forms of genes, they are called alleles. Correct?
Yeah.
And the one thing about alleles is that if you see a chromosome, let's talk about, let's say this is a chromosome. Okay. This is chromosome number 1 of mother, and the same chromosome number 1 of father. Okay. And if I say that, for example, there is a gene X present here. Okay. And gene X is important for, let's say, any characteristic, let's say height for that matter. So if it is present here on chromosome number 1 of mother, it will be present here only at the same specific location on the chromosome number 1 of father as well. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So genes are always present at the same position physically on a chromosome if the chromosome is same. So if we talk about chromosome 1 and chromosome 2, they are two different chromosomes. So we don't have to worry about it.
Yes.
So, and if a gene is present on chromosome number 1 in mother, it will be present on chromosome number 1 in father as well, of the same species. Okay.
Yes.
And this positioning, we call it locus. What we call it?
Locus.
Locus. And if it is plural, we call it loci. Loci for gene. Focus and foci, locus and loci. Okay. So the locus means the physical positioning of the gene on a chromosome. Allele are variants of the gene, and gene is a structural thing present on the DNA. It is a part of DNA, and then DNA is a long thread, a biological molecule which contains lots of bases, which gives rise to our full genome, ATGC.
Yes.
And then if we condense it through proteins and make it like a spool of thread, it becomes chromosome. All the things are clear to you?
Yes, sir.
No doubt?
No doubt.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move forward now and talk about start from the chapter where we left. We started with asexual and sexual, but before that, let me introduce you to two concepts, which is there is something called life cycle of an organism, and the other thing is called lifespan.
Yeah, lifespan, I know. Like
Do you know which one would you like to start with?
lifespan.
Okay, tell me what is a lifespan?
Lifespan is the time, or what we can say. Like it is defined as like from the birth of the organism to the natural death of the organism.
Yeah.
That the time between them.
So the period between birth of an organism to its natural death, right?
Yes.
And the term natural death is important because that is the biological lifespan. So you're correct about lifespan. The period between birth of an organism to its natural death, everything in between is called a lifespan.
Yes.
What may be a life cycle, if you can guess?
Life cycle is the like I have done life cycle of butterfly, frog, like that.
Okay, let's go to the terms. Okay, and I always say in biology, let's go to the term. Whenever you're confused, go to the term. One term is called lifespan. Span means the extent, the totality. Correct?
Yes.
Span can happen only once if it's a span. So if you say that my hand span is this much, so my hand start here and ends here. So this much is my span. It ends. But if something is called life cycle, which means it can happen again and again.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. Anything, if it is a cycle in biology, chemistry, physics, anywhere, cycle means it is repetitive. You understand? Is that you're mute?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now can you guess what can be a life cycle?
Repeated events of an organism in his or her life cycle. I think so.
Yeah. So when we are defining life cycle, we cannot use the same word.
Okay, then we can use a series of events, that happen that happen in the life of an organism.
Okay, let's try to connect it to the chapter that we are studying. Life cycle is more important. Let me give you a guess. Let me give you a hint. Life cycle is more important from reproduction point of view.
Okay.
So what do you understand by this? Anything fix you now?
In reproduction, like
so life cycle is related to reproductivity. So life cycle is the period from the starting, like from the first stage of life, like from fertilization to the point where that organism can now produce another life. So from fertilization to sexual maturity is life cycle. Okay.
Yes.
Make sense? So for example, when does a human's lifespan start? So if we talk about lifespan, what will be the starting point of lifespan?
From birth.
Yes, the day of birth. Your birthday is the start, because from there onwards, we start counting that you have lived 3 days on the planet, 4 days, 4 years, 5 years, like that, right?
Yes.
When the baby is born, we don't say that the baby is 9 months old. Do we say that?
No.
And then after another 4 months, let's celebrate the birthday. No, we don't do that. We say that the baby is 1 day old, right? A 1 day old child, because that is the starting point of lifespan. So the day of birth, if we talk about the lifespan of a chicken, it will be the day the chicken ecloses out of the egg. Correct?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. It will not be the day when the mother chicken gives the egg or lays the egg, because still it's the egg, right? It's not the chicken. So we will not include the age of the egg in the age of in the lifespan of the chicken itself. Just like when we were inside our mother's womb, that period was not counted in our lifespan. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So starting point is day of birth and end point is natural.
Natural.
Correct? Natural death. But if we talk about life cycle, then what is the starting point?
Starting point is fertilization. No, fusion of gametes, like something.
Yes, that's fertilization or syngamy, we call it, right?
Yeah.
So it includes, so our life cycle started as sperm and ovum fusing together and making zygote. So starting point is zygote.
Formation zygote. Okay.
The zygote is formed after the fusion of two gametes, male and female gametes, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And then what is the end point?
End point is death, I think.
Sexual maturity.
Maturity.
In case of humans, it's puberty,
Yeah,
right?
puberty.
So we use the word puberty only for humans. We do not use it for animals, but animals also have a life cycle, like you said, life cycle of a butterfly. So what will be the end point for a butterfly? Zygote, we understand. Zygote is universal. It's universally true for all living systems that reproduce sexually.
For a butterfly will be adult butterfly.
Yes.
Adult. Yeah.
A butterfly that comes out of the pupa and after a few days is ready to give eggs.
Yes.
So from that point to that point is the life cycle, because you can understand the moment we reach puberty, we are capable of repeating the cycle. Before that, we are not even capable. We cannot do that. So a 7 or a 6-year-old boy or a 7 or a 6-year-old girl cannot again begin the cycle of gametogenesis, correct?
Yes, sir.
But after they reach puberty, they can make gametes that can give rise to the cycle again. So from the end point will be sexual maturity. I will use the word sexual maturity. Is it clear between the two?
Yes, sir.
So which one is shorter and which one is longer?
Life cycle is shorter and lifespan is longer.
Yes, for every organism, their life cycle is shorter than their lifespan, correct? And their lifespan could be abruptly longer than the lifespan. For example, parrots, let's take an example of humans. So for humans, the life cycle is for, what is the life cycle?
I think 70 years, 60 years. Or above, we can go 110.
No, life cycle. Life cycle is just
13, 14 years.
14 years.
13,
yes.
14.
We reach puberty at the age of 13 or 14, probably at 12 also. In case of females, they reach earlier, so it can be 11 years also. So the life cycle is 11 to 13 years for human, but the lifespan is 60, 70.
I have heard like 110 a person.
Yes. So on an average lifespan of a human is around 70 years, correct?
70, yeah.
Everyone almost lives 70 years, and people who are healthier even go on to live beyond 100, which means lifespan is bigger. For a parrot also, parrots can outlive humans. You know that? Parrots can live for 140, 150 years.
First time hearing.
Yeah, it seems very odd, There are many species of parrot that outlives human. We think that parrots are going to live. You look at a parrot and no one will say that this parrot could be 70-year-old parrot.
Yeah, it's
On the
very,
other hand, dogs only live for 10 to 13 years.
yeah,
Dogs seems like humans, more like bigger organisms, but their life cycle, their lifespan is very short. Okay.
yes.
They also grow very fast. If you have seen people who have pet dogs or cats, you just bring a pet home, a very small one, and within few months, so an old dog is equivalent to a teenage human.
Hmm. Yes.
A 1-year-old dog is equivalent to a human in its mid 20s, adult. So that's the difference. So sometimes in entrances, what they do is they ask you about just like a factual question. They will say who's. So what I mean to say here is lifespan. You cannot look at an organism and judge their lifespans. Parrot, being a bird, a small organism, can live for 140 years, whereas dog, being a big organism, can only live for 13 to 14 years. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yes. So they often give you questions like uh, uh, choose the correct option of organisms arranged in their increasing order of lifespans. Okay.
Yes.
You have to just go today. So I'm giving you this as an assignment for today. Just go on internet and find the lifespan and life cycle for common organisms that are around us. So most of the times these organisms are the common ones around us. They will not ask you about something very, very exotic like a Siberian polar bear. No.
Yeah.
Cats, dogs, cows, buffaloes, trees around us, the common trees, humans included, monkeys, giraffe, gorilla. You understand?
Yes.
So will you make a list of around 20 organisms?
Okay.
And just and when you are making the list, it's just for your preparation. Do one thing. You can make it around organisms that come into. You don't have to remember each and every one's lifespan and life cycle. Okay, just
Yeah.
aggregate them into those who live, whose lifespan is less than a decade, 10 years. Put them in one bracket. Okay.
Yes.
Then between 1 decade to 5 decades in one. Then 5 to 10 decades, like 10 years, 25 years, 50 years, 75, 100, like that. Okay.
Okay.
Like you must be knowing some tortoise can live for more than 200, 300 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So just make a list of lifespans of common organisms. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Of common organisms around us. Mostly they ask of organisms which are important to human, along with cattle, goats, buffaloes, and organisms which live around us as our pets, or some wild organisms which are of significance like lion, tiger, zebra, donkey, etc.
Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah.
lifespan and life cycle is clear to you.
Yes, sir.
It's also clear that life cycle depends on reproductivity, whereas lifespan it can be abruptly big for even smaller organisms.
Yes.
Okay, so now let's come to asexual mode of reproduction, and let's try to get into some details. Asexual mode. Now we defined reproduction, where I gave you the definition that it is where parent organisms produce offsprings that look similar in their adult form to the parent organism, correct?
Yes, sir.
In asexual mode, so let's just first define asexual mode. Write down. In asexual mode of reproduction, organisms produce offsprings. Organisms produce offsprings
Okay.
organisms produce offsprings without involving any fusion of gametes. Any fusion of gametes. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Full stop. Write down the next point in continuation.
Yeah.
Only one sex is involved. And when you are writing sex, in bracket, write parent.
Okay.
Only one sex, in brackets, parent, is involved.
Okay.
And gametogenesis. Now you know what is gametogenesis, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And gametogenesis may or may not happen. So that is the complete definition. It has 3 points. So whenever asexual mode comes in examination, remember to write these 3 points. First point should be that it's true that gametogenesis, like gamete formation, may or may not happen. So when I say may or may not, I mean they may or may not form gametes. This is the first point. Second point is only one sex is involved.
Okay.
They often call one sex as parent, but I'll tell you why I'm not using the word parent first. But let me just complete first, then I'll tell you. Third important thing is gametogenesis may or may not happen, but gamete fusion strictly does not happen.
So we can write gamete fusion does not happen. Doesn't happen. Okay.
Gamete fusion does not happen. Strictly, it's not allowed. So this is the one thing which never happens. But let's say gametogenesis is happening. So gamete is forming. If an organism is able to form gametes, we cannot say that the organism will only reproduce sexually. Just because it is forming gametes is not a conclusive evidence enough to say that the organism will only reproduce through sexual modes. Earlier, we used to believe that, right?
Yes.
Because it's simple. You are forming gametes, so probably you are going to fuse them with another partner and you are going to do sexual reproduction. But that does not happen all the time. Sometimes, even when gametes are being formed, they cannot be fused with other gametes in the absence of a mate, and certain organisms tend to go through asexual modes of reproduction. So the body is forming gametes but still undergoing asexual mode of reproduction because the gamete fusion is not taking place. Clear?
Yes, sir.
And for asexual mode, only one sex is involved or one parent. NCERT says one parent. It's correct, but let me tell you that it's not totally correct also from biological point of view. And in entrances, you have to remember that by one parent, we mean one body, correct?
Yeah.
We often think that one body has one sex because in humans, normally people think of biology from a very humanitarian perspective, a very anthropocentric view.
Yeah.
Whatever is happening to humans is true in biology. It's not true. In humans, one body has one sex. Like there is a different male body and a different female body. But there are organisms in animal kingdom where in the same body there are both sexes present. Okay, male and female sex both are present in the same body. As a disorder, it's also possible in humans, where a rudimentary male organ is also present and a female organ is also present. It happens. Very rare. But those organisms where both the sexes are present in the same body, you can write down.
We can take example of hermaphrodites.
Yes, they are called hermaphrodites.
Yeah, yeah.
Both sexes present in one body are called hermaphrodites. Okay.
Yes.
We also use a word called bisexual. For plants, we often use it bisexual, which means it has both. Bi means two.
Yes.
So they have both sexes present, bisexual. They are bisexual. Okay. And we also use the word monoecious.
Monoecious. Yeah.
Monoecious. There is only one O, sorry. Monoecious. Now the word bisexual is clear to you.
Yes, sir.
Let me tell you the word hermaphrodites. It's related to sexes, okay, sexuality. Aphrodite, the word Aphrodite is related to sexuality, sex. Aphrodites is it comes from a Greek goddess, which means the goddess of, it's the counterpart for Venus, the Roman counterpart for Venus, okay?
Yes.
So it comes from this word. Hermaphrodites means both sexes are present. Bisexual means the same thing, bisex, two sexes are present. Monoecious also means bisexual in a way, because mono means
What?
no, mono.
Mono means
Monorail,
small,
single,
single. Sorry.
one.
Yeah.
Mono word, you have monotonous. Your tone is very monotonous. You know,
One tone.
yeah, you're just speaking in one tone. It's single or one. And the word oasis comes from the word body. Okay.
Yes.
So monoecious means a single body, which means if I say that this organism is monoecious, it's clear that for the species of this organism, there is only one body. So both the sexes have to be present in the same body. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
There is no concept of other body. So everyone is monoecious in this species. And that one species is called earthworm. In earthworms are hermaphrodites. They have both organs in the same body. Okay. Ovaries and testes both are present in the same body in different segments, of course, but they are called hermaphrodites, bisexual, or monoecious. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So these three terms in biology are used relatively for similar concepts. So the definition of asexual mode is clear, and why I use the word sex and not parent, because hermaphrodite is an exception. So if you say that whenever there is only one parent involved, there will always be asexual mode, then it is incorrect, because earthworm, only one parent involved, but still can undergo sexual reproduction, because it can self-fertilize itself. I mean, self-fertilize it is it's enough, right?
Yes.
If the sperms from its own testes can fertilize the ovum in its ovaries, it's still gamete fusion is happening, correct?
Yes, sir.
So when gamete fusion happens, that crosses the barrier and you enter into a sexual reproduction mode. And for that, sometimes even one parent is enough. So what is more specific is to say sex, because there two sexes are involved. In earthworm also, two sexes are involved, right?
Yes, sir.
But only one body. I hope it's very clear.
Yes, sir.
Now, in asexual mode, there are many ways by which asexual mode can happen. And in today's class, I will be talking about some asexual modes. The first one, you must have read about binary fission.
Yes, sir.
What is binary? The word binary?
Binary means two, and when cell divides into two segments or something like two halves, then we use the word binary fission.
Yes. So binary means two, just like a binary code for computers, like whatever we feed in a computers, it's in the binary codec, either 0 or 1, correct? That is the code. And fission means
Division.
division.
Yeah, division.
Yes. So whenever a cell divides into two equal parts, and through division it is showing reproduction, that's called a binary fission. Now here I would like to bring an interesting concept that is important to understand biologically for your entrances. If an organism is reproducing through binary fission, then that organism has to have, like, it has to be unicellular organism, correct?
Yes, sir.
It has to be a single celled organism. And for single celled organisms, the mode of division is the mode of reproduction itself, correct?
Yeah.
And for single celled organisms, there is no concept of lifespan.
Yeah, they just divide and divide.
Yeah, there is no concept of lifespan or life cycle, correct?
Yes.
There can be concepts of life cycle still, but lifespan does not matter to them because they are biologically immortal. Clear?
Yes.
Because it's simple. This is one bacteria, let's say. Single bacterium. If it is reproducing through binary fission, it will just divide from the center and will form two daughter bacteria, correct?
Yeah.
Now this was the parent bacteria, and these are the daughter bacteria, daughter cells. Now this daughter cell is actually the parent cell itself split in two, because now where is the parent cell? This generation is no more existing, but it did not die. It just divided into daughters. Now they will grow back to the same size and again they will divide. So they will constantly keep dividing, but they will not die naturally unless and until something comes to kill it. Okay. We
Yes.
can kill bacteria by antibiotics. So when you are killing a bacteria, you are just killing it, right? But if you are not, if you are allowing a bacteria to live in nature, it will never meet a natural death. Correct?
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you one question before I move forward. You think about it, take 2 minutes and think and then answer. Can any multicellular organism be immortal?
Multicellular organism.
For unicellular, it's very easy to understand that it can be immortal if it just divides, if it just reproduces through binary fission. Now tell me, because binary fission does not happen in multicellular organisms, right? It only happens in unicellular, I told you. So can a multicellular organism be immortal?
There are some cases. I think so.
Think about
Like
it.
in jellyfish,
Take 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Make your argument in your mind, even if you want to write down some points, because I want to see your critical thinking. Okay. So take 2 minutes, make your argument, and then discuss.
They can divide. They can't divide. Yeah, they can't divide, but they are still immortal. So
No, they can divide. But their cell division is not serving the purpose of reproduction. In multicellular organisms, when cells divide, they divide for growth or repairment or for regeneration, right? Planaria, Hydra, they are all multicellular. But can they be immortal by any way? Think about it.
According to my knowledge, it is not possible. According to my knowledge, because
Nothing to do with your knowledge. It just have to do with logic. So think like a Hydra. Think from a Hydra's perspective, or a paramecium, or a human, or anyone who's multicellular.
Right.
Are humans immortal? No. So forget about it. Any multicellular organism that you think can be immortal?
Hydra can be an example, because they just give birth to a daughter Hydra or something. Then they just live.
What happens to the parent Hydra?
Parent Hydra, they die.
So if they die, how are they immortal? Immortality means the organism once born never dies, always lives. It's immortal. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think? You still have 30 seconds.
Sir, I don't know the answer.
Think about it.
I can't think about it.
You can. So you took an example. So it was a good example. You took an example of Hydra.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's follow with Hydra. Let's try to get with Hydra. Let's first finish binary fission, okay? Then we'll come to Hydra. Let's define it for you. So write down. These are types. There are two modes of reproduction. One mode is asexual, one mode is sexual. Now, in the asexual mode, we are studying types of asexual, right?
Yes.
So write down binary fission. Binary fission
Okay.
is the asexual mode of reproduction where
Here,
parent cell,
parent cell,
or you can write the parent organism, then in
parent
brackets write unicellular. Parent organism, in the bracket write unicellular,
unicellular. Okay.
divides into two
Into two. Okay.
daughter organisms,
Two daughter. Okay.
two equal sized, two equal, that is important in binary fission, in two equal sized daughter organisms.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, in example, you can write bacteria, amoeba, and
Paramecium.
yes, and euglena.
Euglena. Okay.
Euglena. You know euglena?
Yeah.
Yeah. This one. Euglena is an example. Now let's come to Hydra, the topic that we were discussing to understand. So let me give you the answer first, then we'll discuss it. Yes, multicellular organisms can be immortal. And for them to be immortal, they have to just find a way. Clearly, let's first go through logic. So for anyone to be immortal, you have to find a way by which you can just convert into your progenies, correct?
Yeah.
For a single cell, it's very easy because it can split into two, and then two single cells can be the progenies. For a multicellular organism, it has to happen through fragmentation and regeneration, correct?
Yeah.
So if an organism can fragment and then both the fragments can grow back, so technically they will never die. But for that to happen all the time, you have to depend on something. For example, the next mode that we are going to study, the next type of asexual reproduction that we are going to study after binary fission is fragmentation. You must have read about the word fragmentation. And for the sake of both confusion and clarity, I will take fragmentation simultaneously with the third type, which is called regeneration. You also must have read regeneration.
Yes, sir, regeneration.
So can you first tell me, what do you understand by fragmentation, and what do you understand by regeneration?
Fragmentation means basically it is used in planaria. When we cut planaria in pieces, it regenerates its portion, like left portion in the body. So basically,
So while defining fragmentation, you use the word regeneration, which is a different, another word, another type. So what is regeneration then? If I ask you, because you already, it's like, see, definitions have to be very, very accurate because definitions define the process. So if I ask you define processor, you cannot go on saying a processor is a processor that processes a process.
Yeah.
You know, because then you're not defining it. Similarly, if you're defining fragmentation, try not to use the word regeneration, because when you will define regeneration, then it will be confusing. So you meant to say in fragmentation, what I understood, just to put it in good words, is that an organism gets fragmented or broken down into different pieces, and then each piece grows up to become the individual organism. Correct? That is the mode of, that is the type of fragmentation as asexual reproduction. Now, what is regeneration?
Regeneration basically like sorry. We can take an example of lizard. When its tail is broken, then it regenerates its damaged portion of the tail, and
But do you think that the tail, so in case of a lizard, let's discuss some clarity. So let's say, let me make a lizard. I have never made a lizard before. I hope I do some justice to the lizard. Forget my, forgive my beautiful.
No problem.
Okay, let's say this is a lizard. Okay.
Okay.
Looks like something a lizard.
Yeah.
And suppose you said that lizards can regenerate the tail, but how does lizard first get rid of the tail? You know, lizards can voluntarily shed their.
They can shade their tails if they feel like someone is attacking them or they are attacked by.
So what lizards do is, if you chase a lizard to an extent where the lizard is afraid of its life and now there is no other way, then the lizard will just detach its own tail from its body. You know, it is slightly painful, but it detaches its tail and the tail falls off and still it's like moving.
Yeah.
It wriggles like a living system. So you get distracted, or any organism chasing the lizard gets distracted, the predator basically, and lizard gets the time to escape. And after some time, that lizard regenerates its tail. This is what you are saying, correct? Now my question is, what happens to the tail?
Tail just decays and
yeah, tail just dies, right?
Yeah.
So tail does not regenerate the rest of the lizard.
Nose.
Then is it truly a mode of reproduction? Because in reproduction, we have to reproduce the organism. Fragmentation is a true mode of reproduction, because those organisms that show fragmentation, you fragment the body. Lizards do not show fragmentation, right?
Yeah.
The Hydra does. So if you break down Hydra's body into 4 parts, does not matter which part contains what, all the 4 parts will grow back to 4 individual Hydras. Right? Same happens for planaria, same happens for paramecium. But in case of regeneration for lizards, that's not happening. The tail is not growing back as a living organism, but the living organism is growing back its tail. So do you think regeneration is a true mode of reproduction?
It's not true mode of reproduction, but it is a type of reproduction. So we can take it.
How it's a type of reproduction?
It's a type of reproduction.
Organisms are not reproducing. Lizards are not reproducing through regeneration. They are just using it as a defense tactic, because they can regenerate their lost body parts back. For that matter, let me ask you, do humans regenerate? Do we have the ability to regenerate?
Yeah, we can regenerate, but on small scale, like our liver can regenerate.
Yes.
And
so on an organ level, we can regenerate certain organs to some extent, but not all. Like our hearts cannot regenerate, but our livers can. Our brain cannot regenerate. You know, our eyes cannot regenerate. Our nails can regenerate. The nail bud actually they always regenerate. They keep regenerating. That's why we have to cut them off. Our hairs regenerate, right?
Yes.
Our skin regenerates. Bone to some extent also regenerates, but not to greater extent. So we also have the ability to regenerate certain limited body parts to some extent. Same lizard is doing. Then I'm asking you that why do we study regeneration as a mode of reproduction?
I don't know.
Okay, so let's first do fragmentation, then we'll come to regeneration. Okay.
Yes.
So see, Zed, over time, because you have a very sharp mind, you have a good analytical mind that I can understand from discussions, and because a setup like Learnivio gives you a good opportunity to interact with the teacher, you know, and my classes are always going to be like this, and you do interact. It's a very good thing. Even when some other people gets added to your batch, currently there are you and one another girl, and she's absent today, but when people will be in your batch, it will be a small batch, but you still have to continue discussions. Okay. And I want you to develop over time this robustness of defending your opinions in science. Okay. you have to think through. If you believe like something, you cannot all the time debate it. But if you logically know something, if you know certain rules by which you can reach somewhere, then you can debate, right? So in
Yes.
science, debates and discussions are very important. Okay. So
Okay.
over time, I want to see you growing in that direction. Okay. Before you become a biotechnologist, you have to become a science student first. Clear? Yeah. So fragmentation, first let's define it, write down.
Fragmentation.
Fragmentation is a mode of or a type of asexual reproduction in which the parent body divides into many fragments. The parent body divides into many fragments, and each fragment develops into a new individual organism.
Okay.
Done?
Yes.
For example, write down examples. Planaria, Hydra, Spirogyra. So let's take an example of Hydra. So what happens is, so this is a Hydra, okay?
Okay.
Tentacles, and we have, this is the opening. So this is a Hydra and attached to substrate. So if I cut an Hydra from here, then the top part, which contains the tentacles, will grow back the bottom part and will become a new organism. And the bottom part, which was attached to the substratum, will grow back tentacles, mouthpiece, and will become another organism. Okay.
Yes.
This is fragmentation. And Hydra can show fragmentation to a very, very great extent. Okay. Even if you take Hydra, 10 Hydras, put them in a mixer grinder and then squish it, make a chutney out of it.
Okay.
So that there are thousands of small pieces of Hydra. Then you put all those 1,000 pieces on a sponge, nutritive medium. Okay. And then you will see thousands of Hydra growing and developing.
So is there any way to kill them?
No.
No.
So this is where Hydra, being a multicellular organism, can achieve immortality. Okay. Hydra is immortal, just like amoeba and bacteria, even if it is a multicellular organism, because it naturally, you cannot make a Hydra die unless and until someone eats an Hydra. So even eats the complete Hydra. Even if you are eating the Hydra, you have to eat the whole Hydra, correct, to kill it. Because suppose you are eating a Hydra and you left, like one tentacle gets detached while you are chewing it and it fell somewhere, it can again, regrow to the full Hydra.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yes.
So Hydras are also immortal. This is where Hydras are immortal through fragmentation, correct?
Yes.
And fragmentation is nothing but just like a fission in multicellular organisms. If you see the concept, it's same, right?
Yeah.
One body, if it is a single cell body, you divide it into 2 or 3 pieces. Just like binary fission, there is something called multiple fission. Remember?
Yeah, multiple. Yeah.
Multiple fission happens in Euglena. Sorry, also in Chlamydomonas. So instead of forming 2 progenies from one parent organism, they form multiple smaller progenies from one parent organism. That's called multiple fission. So fragmentation is just like that, right? Yes. So you understand fragmentation?
Yes, I understood.
Now coming to regeneration, why regeneration is still we study it under the mode of reproduction is because there are many organisms at like some not very higher organisms like lizards, but many organisms do show reproduction through regeneration. For example, let's first define regeneration. Write down. Regeneration is
is
the ability of growing back the lost body parts of an organism.
of
Lost body part of an organism,
an organism. Okay. Sir.
or in some cases, growing a new organism from a lost body part. You understand?
Yes, sir.
So if you are just growing lost body parts of an organism, that is not a mode of reproduction. That is just the ability to regenerate, like humans and lizards have. So giving an example of lizard, you cannot say that regeneration is a mode of asexual reproduction.
So can we take the example of starfish?
We can take the example of planaria and hydra actually, to be more accurate. If we take an example of human or a lizard or a starfish, let me introduce you to a concept in regeneration that is called the minimum threshold. What is threshold?
Threshold frequency. Something.
What is threshold? Threshold means
no, I don't know.
Boundary. The boundary conditions above or below which things will not work.
Yes.
Minimum threshold, the maximum threshold. So the minimum threshold is applicable for regeneration in many contexts. For examples, you said starfish. Even for starfish or for lizards or for humans also, whenever we lose something which can regenerate back. Okay, so let's take an example of an organism. This is an organism whose body shape is like this. Okay.
Okay.
If I cut this organism from this point, first let me cut it from the center. So this part 1 and this part 2 both are capable of regenerating back the new organism, correct?
Yes, sir.
But let's say I am cutting the organism from this point. So here, this is 1, but this is the second part. Now we know that 1 is capable of regenerating this back.
Yeah.
But this small part, whether this will be able to regenerate the whole organism back is not always
necessary.
Possible.
Yeah, not possible.
So sometimes you need minimum number of cells or minimum tissue that can regenerate the whole thing back. For example, if we keep on cutting our liver into parts. So if I cut a human liver, while transplanting, I take half of liver from a human body. Then the other half will regenerate the half back. But if I just leave 5% of the liver and take out 95%, that 5% will not be able to regenerate back 95%. And the
decay. Yeah.
Same is for our fingertips. You know, our fingertips can regenerate back.
Yes, sir.
Because it has a nail bud. So if you just slice your fingertips, sometimes someone's fingertips get sliced in a machine or something. And if I make a human nail here, human fingertip, this is a human finger with a nail, okay?
Yeah.
The nail. Now here is the nail bud, correct?
Yeah.
And this nail keeps on growing all the time. And inside the bone is also there. So if someone slices the fingertip from here and only this portion is lost, then it can be regenerated back, correct?
Yeah.
But if someone's finger gets cut from here, where a major chunk of the bone also gets away with that, along with the nail bed, it will not regenerate back, because
but we can it is stitched together again and something like that.
Yeah, that is transplantation, and it can work to a point where both these tissues are living.
Yeah.
So you have to do it fast. You know, that is a different thing. That is both were living, they just got detached, so you are just attaching it back and hoping Hello. Hello, Zed, I'm audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know, I logged out accidentally. Zoom just crashed.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So give me 1 minute to reshare the screen again. Okay, in the meanwhile, what we were discussing was, I was telling you about regeneration, right? We were discussing regeneration and fragmentation. So I was telling you that taking an example of the lizard, right? You cannot say that regeneration is a mode of reproduction. If you are taking lizard as an example or a human as an example, we can say that regeneration with the ability of regeneration, we can grow back certain lost organs. That's all, correct?
Yeah.
But we can only say that regeneration leads to reproduction by taking Hydra and Planaria as example, because Hydra, it uses the power of regeneration to regenerate the whole organism back. And when it regenerates the whole organism, that process is reproduction, because you are reproducing the organism back from the lost fragment. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah.
So regeneration is often considered as an ability more than a mode of reproduction. Okay. So it is not a true form of reproduction for many, but for certain limited organisms, it is a form of reproduction. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So you remember it?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Okay. So, let me share the. So questions that come on regeneration are where they ask you about the difference, how regeneration is different from fragmentation. So what will you say? How do you think regeneration is different from fragmentation, from what we have discussed till now?
In regeneration, like it is the ability of growth back in an organism. It is the ability to grow back its lost part of the body,
or in some cases, grow back the organism from the lost body part.
from the lost body.
The
But
second part of the definition actually accounts for the process of reproduction. Right?
Yeah.
But the first part of the definition just tells about regeneration as a ability. Correct?
Yes.
Yes. So the difference between the two will be for fragment and also for fragmentation to happen. Let's come to the fragmentation because we are taking both simultaneously. For fragmentation to happen, do you think the organism can just break down into fragments by its will?
No.
No. Correct. So any external force has to be there, an external factor has to be there. First break it down so that each broken part, each broken fragment can grow back into an individual organism. In case of regenerations, we have seen that often organisms can break down their own body parts, like in case of lizards, voluntarily, which can regenerate back. Correct?
Yes.
Yes. So in regeneration, write down example, Planaria and Hydra. So by now, you have understood that a single organism can have more than one different ways of reproducing asexually. Like taking an example of Hydra, Hydra can also show fragmentation, it can also show budding, it can also show regeneration, correct?
Yeah.
And out of which, let me ask you if, so let's first go to budding then, okay? Then we'll go to the fourth mode, budding. We'll finish budding today. And that is where we'll end the class, okay? With asexual reproduction. So what do you understand by the term budding? How is it different from anything that we have studied till now?
In budding, like again, we can take an example of Hydra, like from pre-existing Hydra, they can form a birds. Birds. There are different kinds of birds, and basically, what can I say?
Yeah. So before going into different kinds of bird, let's just try to understand how what part is we form birds.
Yeah.
How are birds different from fragmentation or regeneration is that. So in a hydra, let's say again, let's take an example. It can also happen in yeast. Okay. Yeast also undergoes budding, so it's called budding yeast. So let's say hydra. So on a hydra, there is a small bud that crops up. So let me use another color for the bird. A small bird looks like a small hydra. It comes out. Okay. And this bud stays attached to the parent body till the point it is developed properly and it is now capable of independent existence. Okay.
Yes.
So it's like hydra is taking care of a baby attached to its body, where hydra, the mother hydra, is providing nutrition and shelter and everything that is required for development and growth. And once the bird reaches a size which is now grown up, developed, and is capable of living alone, it gets detached from the parent body and lives as an individual organism. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So this is budding. So first define it, write down.
Hmm.
Budding is the process of producing an offspring. Budding is the process of producing an offspring through buds that develop,
Hmm.
on the parent's body.
Parents.
Body.
Boy. Okay.
Full stop. Next point. The bird derives nutrition and shelter. The bird derives nutrition and shelter from the parent organism. And gets detached
Hmm. And
after it is fully grown.
Afterwards.
It is fully grown and is capable of independent existence. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Now quickly, so we have covered 4 things. The 5th part that we will take in the next class is called vegetative propagation. It is another mode of asexual reproduction that happens in higher plants. Okay.
Yeah.
So so your assignment for this class will be, along with finding out and making a list for life spans, we will also go and just brush up different types of vegetative propagation techniques. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, in roses, we can say like vegetative propagation.
What?
In rose.
Yes, in rows we do vegetative. In lots of other, and there are different types of vegetative propagation that you have to just go and brush up, because that you have studied in your lower classes, but not in greater detail. Okay. So here we have to do things in detail so that you get prepared for any question that comes, like any difficulty level of question that comes.
Yeah.
Now, if I ask you, this is one question for boards. Among budding, so hydra is capable of producing organisms through budding, fragmentation, and regeneration, correct?
Yeah.
So out of the 3, which do you think is the most convenient mode of reproduction for hydra and the most natural mode of reproduction for hydra? When I'm asking more convenient, more natural, then you have to think of the mode which is most voluntary, which hydra can do at its will. Can hydra reproduce through fragmentation at will?
No, sir. I think the budding is the most like convenient.
Yes. And budding, because budding hydra voluntary, it can do voluntary. Right? Whereas for fragmentation, we need an external factor that first breaks it down into different fragments. And for regeneration also, we need something that first cuts it so that it can regenerate.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
You know, you're ready for the answer?
Yeah.
Write down this question and write down your answer, and we'll discuss it in the next class. So time is up. So let's leave the class here. You have any doubts, Zed, before I finish?
No, sir.
No? Okay, then see you in the next class.
Thank you so much.
Take good care of yourself and see you. Bye.
See you.